times in India as well. But it's nice to have a family here and people that can support you and hold you accountable and love you and be there for you. Your children need that, and we need that with each other. This past week was Valentine's Day. I don't know, do people celebrate Valentine's Day in India, or is that not an Indian thing?
No,
Some a little.
More than here.
Here in the United States, Valentine's Day fell on the same day as Ash Wednesday, the beginning of Lent. So my wife and I, we didn't do anything to celebrate. Of course, we've been married a long time, but Valentine's Day in America is like one of those holidays that's like St. Patrick's Day. It kind of has a religious roots, but nowadays most people don't celebrate it in a religious way, and it's just kind of a cultural thing that people do. But I thought because Valentine's Day was this week, it might be a neat time to talk about marriage and what the Bible says about marriage and how the Bible sees marriage and what marriage is from a biblical perspective. Different cultures I know relate to marriage differently. And I've been really interested and fascinated in hearing the stories of you all and how you met your spouse. People in India seem like traditionally do it very differently than people in the United States. In the United States, most people, if they're Christian, they think about who I would like to spend the rest of my life with and what that person would be like. Somebody who would love Jesus and somebody who would share my same values, somebody who would want to raise kids in the same way that I would. But it's kind of, there's a certain haphazardness or trust in God that God will bring the right person to you. You'll find the right person because there's not a good system. But it seems like in Indian culture, you guys have a good system. In some ways, it's much more biblical. In biblical days, the parents usually decided who their children would marry, even when their children were very young. And their children could be, 5 years old or 6 years old. And the parents would decide already, my child is going to marry your child if everything works out. Then when they came to the right age, they would get betrothed, and then they would get engaged, and then they would marry. And so it's similar. I mean, you all use your parents to help find your spouse oftentimes. And you, sometimes do people use professional matchmakers as well? Yes. Most people do, or no, not most people? Most people do. And fascinating things happen in the United States. I've done about 125 weddings in the past 20 years I've been in ministry, about 125 weddings. And this never happened in the beginning, but recently as I do weddings, I ask people, how did you meet? What made you want to get married? About half of the people that want to get married met through some kind of a online dating or profile system nowadays, which is kind of like that. In some cases, they fill out a profile, and the profile tries to match them up. And a lot of times it works. It works better in American culture than a lot of the ways that people used to do. It was like, especially people that weren't Christian, going to bars and just looking for people, and it's very haphazard. But when we do a wedding in the church, we call the wedding a celebration of Christian marriage. If they're Christian people coming in to be wed, we call it a celebration of Christian marriage. And just like India, probably more so in India than here, people take weddings very seriously. In India, you all take weddings very seriously, right? Yes. And you have a big celebration, lots of food. Yeah. The whole family comes.
Yeah.
1,000 people?
Yeah.
More than really? And the parents have to pay for it, or you pay for it?
No,
the man's parents or the woman's parents or both?
50-50. Both share.
They share.
Yeah.
But still our parents do.
So they save up all their life for that.
Yeah,
man. In the United States, traditionally, it changes for some people, but traditionally, the man's parents pay for the wedding party, and the groom's parents pay for the rehearsal. There's usually a rehearsal dinner after the rehearsal, and then the groom's parents, the bride's parents pay for that, and the man's parents pay for the wedding. That's the traditional way. It changes sometimes. But anyways, they put a lot of money not as much as probably India, a lot of money, a lot of thought into the wedding. And as a pastor, I try to get to think more about the marriage than the wedding. So